All right, you got a hand for us, Megan?
Yeah, this is a 2-5 hand. 700 effective, nine-handed.
Okay, 700 effective, nine-handed, 2-5. Okay, and Megan was the last time Megan called in. She had that great call that actually did really, really well. It's got about 65,000 views on YouTube. I forget the name of it, but it was a pretty good call. It's from like a month ago or something like that. Vancouver Island, right?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, all right. So set us up here.
Yeah, okay, so this is I'm in MP1 with King of Clubs, Jack of Clubs.
Okay.
There's two limps ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
Then I don't know what happened. Usually I would raise this to 30, but for some reason I made it 20 here. This was the start of a disaster of a hand, really.
So this is a situation where usually you open a 20 and you sort of didn't click in with the two limps but you would have added the blinds, right, on top.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
100% make this 30 here. I
Yeah.
don't know what happened, but it I made it 20.
Okay.
So
Okay, so you go 20. Yep.
Yeah, cutoff calls, under the gun calls, MP calls.
All right, cutoff calls, under the gun calls, and MP calls. Okay, so typical sort of multi-way spot. Okay.
Yeah, so it's four ways to the flop.
Yep.
There's like 75. The flop comes down, Jack of Hearts, 10 of clubs, 5 of hearts.
So Jack of clubs, 10 of hearts, 5 of hearts. So hero's got top pair, backdoor
Sorry,
club, backdoor
yeah,
club.
Jack of Hearts, 10 of clubs, 5 of hearts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Got it if I missaid it. But okay. So Jack of Hearts, 10 of Clubs, 5 of Hearts. Okay.
Yeah, so it's check to me, and I bet 35. That's pretty much the only decision I'm happy with in this whole hand.
Okay. So you go 35. I mean, I think that you can tend to sort of size up here a little bit on a connected type of board. You know, you're going to have a lot of this stuff sort of represented with, a lot of people play offsuit broadways, a couple flush draws out there. It's kind of connected. So I could actually see sizing up like on a two Broadway board like this. I might even go like 50, something like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, just cutoff calls.
So cutoff calls and the other two fold, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so now we are at, I would say, a pot of 155, right?
Yeah, I have it 145. Yeah, somewhere like
Okay,
that.
okay.
Yeah, and this is a guy I've played with a lot. He like calls a lot, especially like he'll overcall things like naked flush draws, and then he'll like overplay hands that are like top pair shit kickers. So if he had like Queen Jack or something like that here, I'd expect him to raise. But he's calling with like pretty much every draw in the universe.
Okay.
So that kind of comes into play later in my thought process. Anyways, the turn is the Queen of Clubs.
Now, I think that this is super, super interesting here when I was reading this one on the Queen of Clubs, like from a theoretical perspective. And again, obviously, if you're sort of balancing stuff live, it's a little bit overrated. It's sort of what do you want to do with your hand? So you basically turn a royal flush draw here, right?
Yeah, I loved this turn at the time. Oh man, I loved it so much.
Well, my only question though, although you might have given me the answer ahead of time though too. I mean, if he's super super wide, then there probably still is a number of different hands that he could call you with. But the thing that I find interesting about the turn, even though it gives you a bunch of equity, is that it can be a card that will hit your opponent that will improve him to top pair. And when you're trying to get called by sort of the middling to bottom parts of his range, it's such a scare card for him because if you were c-betting ace king, now it comes in that like a jack might fold out. And then of course you're behind to two pair, which you're not getting those hands to fold. You know what I mean? So I kind of thought about this one when you emailed me in about like, what is the play here? Because what are we trying to accomplish? Now, if you're always trying to bet like sort of your range advantage in given scenarios, and keep incredibly balanced, I can sort of sometimes get on board with the bet. However, I do wonder if it's actually more efficient to sometimes check here. Because it's not just like, if you say, well, I've got a big draw here, I'm going to bet. Well, what are you trying to get to fold that's better than your hand? Because you already have maybe you come up with like ace jack, right? That's like one hand. But like, what else,
Yeah, yeah, totally. And yeah, at the time I loved it and was 100% happy with betting, but in retrospect, I think I might need like two pair or even like an overpair to kind of continue here for
Well,
value.
yeah. I mean, it's just like I said, your hand is sort of in between. Like you got a boatload of equity against any. I mean, you got a royal draw, right? But then the question becomes, here, put it this way, like, especially if you had additional stacks up, this is why I think this is a cool spot. Like, you might go so far as to say is that if you're going to bet this turn, you might need to triple barrel the river. And then really it's just a question of like, what are you trying to get off? Because then you're really targeting like single paired queens, which might not have been the setup where you thought that you were going with this, where if you get called, do I need to bluff the river here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you do?
So I bet 120 and he called.
So you went pretty large, 120 into like 145 or whatever it is, 155. That's a big bet, 3/4. So do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like now, do you have the best hand when you're called?
Yeah, probably not. It was a pretty scary call.
Yeah. So whenever you bet, let's say that you're, and again, maybe you didn't necessarily think through it at the time because you see the royal, but whenever I always try to simplify this down, if you are betting for value and you are scared when you get called, then you've probably done something wrong. And
Yeah.
that's usually when it's heads up. I mean, things can happen when it's multi-way, but that's to boil that part down. So that's why it's a little bit in between. But okay, so we're at 385 to 395 with about maybe 525 left in the stack, right?
Yep.
Okay.
The river comes to the 3 of diamonds.
Okay.
And I really thought about like bet folding here, kind of as played. But I ended up checking.
Well, I think, again, it's a situation where I think you've set it up now where I don't know, do you have enough showdown value to win the way that this one went down? Because you're the one that has Jack X of clubs. And you say, well, maybe he's got Jack X of clubs. Well, you can't have that. So what could he have here? I mean, maybe if he's quote unquote out to lunch, one of just a guy that never folds, like actually you're losing an ace jack too. I was going to say he shows up with ace jack, but you're losing an ace jack too. I'm trying to think like Jack 9, you know what I mean? Something like that. So I do wonder here if you are supposed to try to triple barrel off a hand here, but then again, you are trying to sports kind of like specifically target king queen, which you block, and maybe ace queen, and then it doesn't sound like this guy's going to be folding 2 pair all that often, right?
No, yeah, I don't think so.
It's an interesting little spot the way that it's set up. So you check.
Yeah, and he like immediately rips it like 520 effective.
So 3-9. So yeah. So wow, over the size of the pot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I can come up with a bluff here. I mean, enough, right? I mean, I guess maybe not flush draw, not heart draw on the front door side that calls and then picks up a gut shot and then just totally, whiffs like ace 7 of hearts, something like that. By the way, 8-9 here is there too. 8-9 is there too. People saying king 10. Yes, you do beat king 10 as I was sort of going through that. I don't think any of those hands are just going to jam now. So because you do have the luxury of that small stakes exploit where people don't turn enough pairs into bluffs. They don't rightly sort of figure out that their hand's not going to have a showdown value here, and maybe sometimes make the proper move to take 10-9 and turn it into a bluff. Although I will say that when you bet on the flop, the cutoff was the next to act to call, right? He really shouldn't be calling with 9-10, right?
Yeah.
He was next to act to call. So, I mean, that right there, that's out sort of to left field. But I think at this point I fold.
Yeah, I think that's the move here.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point I fold. Now people saying pot size bet screams bluff to me. Again, I mean, you got to really go down into the weeds here, though. It is kind of bizarre, though. It is kind of bizarre to face a pot size bet all in when you have ace king. Although it's so rare that you're going to play ace king here as a check on the river. So you folded?
No, so I was on life tilt and stuck like 1400 at this point. So I convinced myself.
You never sent me the results, did you? I just assumed.
Yeah, I convinced myself that he would do this with the nut flush draw, and I called, and he had 5-5 for a set of fives, bottom set.
Wow. Well,
I thought he would raise that along the way, which was like part of the reason that I
That's a hand that we didn't
found
even.
a
That actually makes a whole lot of
massive
sense.
hero call.
Well, that makes a whole lot of sense because okay, so he's slow playing the flop, right? He's slow playing the flop, and now all of a sudden on the turn he's scared of Ace King, right?
Yeah,
He's scared of Ace
yeah.
King.
And then I
So
check, so then
yeah,
he's happy.
yeah. I mean, and then you check the river, and you're not doing a whole lot of checking with Ace King, so it actually makes a lot of sense. Now, are you going to be able to bluff him off of that? No,
No,
no.
yeah,
And I think what would ended up happening here was if I were you and I check turn, he's going to bet, I call, and then on the river we break out, I check. And then if he were to bet again, I might get curious, but the pot would have been a lot smaller. And again, because at that point, if he goes bet turn, bet river after I check turn, he's gonna be he's gonna be representing at least top two plus. So I might actually get curious, but I think the blast here though, I do fold. But that's a nice little hand, Megan. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
yeah. No worries.